The Ascension Sanctum by September Storrie. Narrated by September Storrie. Jairus stood gazing at his reflection in a mirror older than himself, and he didn't care to recall his exact age. Cracks littered his face like the mirror, deep lines especially between the eyebrows and at the outer corners of the eye. The only part of Jairus' face not plagued by wrinkles was a tight red patch of skin on the left side from his early days experimenting with magic. His eyelids drooped over his astute green eyes. His lips had grown so thin. His long and scraggly hair hung from a much receded hairline. An unwelcome ticking sound pierced the old man's ears, causing him to spin around and look to the door on his left. The door remained closed, its lock undisturbed. He glanced around at every corner of his work hall. He was alone. They weren't here. Jairus reached into his long jacket pocket, grabbed the item inside, and then dropped it. He grabbed the item again and pulled out a charcoal gray pocket watch. A thick crack had stretched across the watch's face and branched out towards the edge. One of the hands ticked backwards a tick. It wasn't his time yet. He shoved the watch back into his pocket. He looked up at the mirror, jumping at the sight of the relic staring back at him. Jairus curled his lip, flaring his nostrils, and sighed. What remained of his original form, a skeleton in a loose bag of skin. Every now and then he would take a look out of morbid curiosity. Only a few knew his primordial form. He closed his eyes and touched his thumbs to his temples. When he opened his eyes, the mirror was much lower. Now a tall, beautiful woman with the smoothest olive complexion, full lips, and thick hair like black silk that draped down her back and ended at her hips. A tightly curved, slender, boyish figure. Itzcalia, High Priestess of the Disorder of Aquilina. The only features that remained of his original form were the green eyes. Itzcalia turned around and gazed at the large hall that was Jairus' laboratory. A few large candelabras hung above, casting a warm glow onto everything their light touched. 23 large, transparent tanks, each holding a different person or creature whose form she preserved and used as she had need or even the faintest desire. Surrounding the tanks were shelves of thick books, cracked and frayed, mostly written by Jairus, and tables full of all manner of glass and metal scientific equipment. She walked up to the tank that contained her current form. The woman hung suspended in the clear ember fluid, an invention of Jairus's. The woman's eyes were open, both eyes completely white after decades in the tank. Other than her eyes, the woman's appearance was completely preserved. Her long, dark hair floated around her naked figure in feathery strands. Itzcalia remembered when she first came across this form at some shop. The beauty of the woman's form had enthralled Jairus, so tall and elegant, with such long, lustrous hair. What was her name? Azima Amante? If the woman ever woke up, she wouldn't be able to remember her own name. Jairus had lured her as his much younger self to dinner, where he caused the unsuspecting woman to fall asleep. Then he, Ever, and Liana took the woman to the laboratory. This form was one of Jairus' favorites. He would usually grow tired of a form and eventually have them disposed of in one way or another, but he had a handful of forms he held on to. This form was one of a few he had kept for such a long time. Itzcalia turned and walked down the tank-lined hall, through a small doorway, into a small hallway. The hall was dark. She snapped her fingers and flames appeared above the white candles lining the long, long corridor. She walked further and further down the long hall. She enjoyed the light and graceful way this form felt and moved. In this form, Itzcalia always wore a simple white dress that clung in the right areas and cut deep in the front and the back. No shoes. Sometimes she would put her hair up in a crown of greenery for special days, such as the Wild. Eventually, she stopped and opened a door in the ceiling. She pulled down a ladder and glided up. The ladder led into a large, empty room. Autumn leaves scattered all over the wood floor. Itzcalia slowly and silently closed the door beneath her, shoving some of the leaves over the door to hide it. 3 of the room's walls were bare. White handprints covered the 4th wall. On the floor against the wall was a large woven green rug where Itzcalia slept. Well, that is what she told the followers of Aquilina. At a certain point, after acquiring and applying so much deep knowledge, sleep was no longer necessary. She couldn't recall the last time she slept. not in this century. A single candle stood in a candle holder next to the rug from where the room's light emanated. The leaves crunched beneath her soft feet as they crossed the room to the bedroom door. The priestess slipped out the door into another hall. She floated down the hall to the next room and opened the door softly. A lamp sat on a white stone table in the center of the room. Surrounding the table on this leaf-littered floor lay 6 women in their white sheet dresses, sprawled out in a myriad of positions. Her wild council. Some were old, some were young. There was even one of the Jensine and a Myrfandine, her majestic antlers protruding from her gorgeous deep brown curls. Itzcalia approached a fair, freckle-skinned girl with short blonde curls for hair. She knelt beside the girl who snored lightly on her little pillow. "Kolet," the High Priestess whispered. The young woman slowly opened her eyes, then widened them as they focused on Itzcalia. "It's time." Kolet arose without a sound. She was a petite thing. Itzcalia led Kolet out of the room, back out into the hall. Itzcalia placed her free hand on Kolet's shoulder and smiled. "Kolet, I am so proud of how far you have come since you joined the Wild Council. Tonight your devotion to the wildness will be tested in the Ascension Sanctum." "Yes, priestess," Kolet said. Itzcalia daintily grasped Kolet's hand and they sauntered further down the hall. The hall began to slope down as they came to another door. This one much taller than the others, a dark oak wood door. The High Priestess pulled a skeleton key from her hair. The door unlocked with a loud clunk. Itzcalia held the door for Kolet, who entered. Once Itzcalia had locked the door behind them, they descended a wide set of stairs into the even deeper basement. Itzcalia stopped at the bottom of the staircase and looked around. She breathed the air and sighed with satisfaction. The musty smell of hay, a tinge of copper, the tart aroma of vair, and the enveloping, rotting fragrance of wolves hung in the air. The pale green light of vair bulbs in little cages hanging from the ceiling lit this area. Itzcalia and Kolet stood at one end of a long hallway lined by more dark doors, 7 to the right and 7 to the left. "High Priestess." Itzcalia looked down at the girl who wore a perplexed expression. "Yes, Wild One? I thought the Vair lights were for those who deny the wildness within. Why are they here?" "A lie told for the sake of those who are unable to know and unwilling to understand. The light of Vair accelerates the emergence of the inner wolf. But that is a revelation only for those who have entered the Ascension Sanctum. Tell no one." Itzcalia led the way down the hall. Each door was several inches thick, with a small door at a height only Itzcalia could feasibly open and peer through. She glided over to the first door on the left and unlatched the small door. A figure sat in the back corner. The person was difficult to recognize anymore. Large tufts of wiry fur all over their body, and even a large pointed ear sticking out up on one side of its head. It sat amongst some freshly scoured bones on a floor of hay. One of the creature's eyes no longer had a circle for its center, but a horizontal slit, and was no longer brown, but a pale green, surrounded by fur. The air rumbled with its low growl. She smiled. "Good evening, my pup. How do you feel?" The figure lifted its head to gaze at her. It growled again, growing louder. "The ascension is nearly complete." She didn't suppress the glee in her voice. The creature jumped up and started to run toward her on all fours, but Itzcalia held up her hand, and the creature froze. "Sit." It obeyed. "I will bring fresh meat soon." She latched the little door and walked 2 doors down. The High Priestess knocked on the door. "Gefford?" Silence. Itzcalia opened the small door, now standing eye to eye with a wolf, its slit pupil eyes staring through her, silent. She grinned. "I knew you would do it, Gefford. I'll take you home." She opened the full door. The wolf stood waiting. Kolet gasped. Itzcalia let her eyes trail up and down the wolf's form. Its large ears drooped. Its eyes peered out from their half-shut lids. Its sparse tail even dragged on the ground. The wolf was frail, its bones jutting out like shards of glass. Itzcalia petted the wretched monster on its side. At first it flinched at her touch, but it soon leaned in toward her. She turned to Kolet. This was Gefford, a longtime member of the Disorder. "You may remember him." "I will call you Gromak." "Yes, my Gromak. Mayhaps we shall meet one of your new brothers or sisters today." She caressed the wolf's snout. The creature groaned quietly. Itzcalia turned and walked across the hall to another door, her Gromak following. She unlatched the small door. There was not a growl this time, but instead the soft sound of crying met her ears. A fully human woman sat in the corner, covered only by the tatters of a garment she held close, trying to hold on to some semblance of modesty, a useless human trait. Enraged, Itzcalia slammed open the tall door. "What is going on here?" The middle-aged woman's face was muddied by dirt and tears. Her hair hung a mess of greasy strings around her face, scabbed and fresh scratches all over her body, her knees bruised, not a tuft of fur to be seen. A large brown bottle stood empty but intact on the stone floor. There was even some meat left on the bones that had been arranged in a pile in the other corner. At Itzcalia's exclamation, the woman began to sob. Between sobs, she said, "High Priestess! I did everything you said. Stop wailing." Wide-eyed, the woman stopped speaking and effortfully slowed her breath momentarily. "Ethne?" Kolet said, eyes wide. Itzcalia leaned down and grabbed the blubbering woman's chin. "You have been in the Ascension Sanctum for a month. You begged for this. How dare you? Are you bent on killing the wolf within? If you continue this way, you will never ascend from this human carcass. Do you know how many others would have transformed by now? You are a disgrace." She dropped the woman's face. "But I have served you these 7 years. I gave you all I had. I gave you all of me." Itzcalia slapped the woman's face. "Woman!" Ethne let out a cry. "Stand." The wretched woman stumbled to her feet, looking up at her high priestess. Itzcalia placed her hand on one side of Ethne's face and took 2 fingers, dragging her long, pointed fingernails down the other side. The woman whimpered. "Silence," Itzcalia hissed. Itzcalia pulled her hand away, revealing deep scratches down the woman's cheek. She looked back at Kolet. The young girl was very still, very controlled, but her eyes were still wide and now glistening. A single tear slid down her face as she averted her gaze to the floor. Turning back to the puddle of a person before her, Itzcalia said, "You have one Senite. Find the inner wolf and bring her to the surface." Ethne's expression had changed to one of resignation. "That is more like it." Itzcalia closed the big door behind her. The cell remained silent. She grasped the fur around Gromok's neck to lead him. "I know I was harsh with her. Being alone in the sanctum is a blessing, but sometimes people allow their minds to fill when they should just be. She is better for what I did and said." Kolet didn't bring her eyes up. "Let us take Gromok to the others. He deserves to be with his brothers and sisters." "Yes, High Priestess." At the back of the room was another door. Itzcalia waved it open and led Kolet and Gromok down the long hall with fewer lamps hanging from the walls. The wolf moved with slow but steady strides alongside Itzcalia, its face the same height as hers. Kolet walked a few steps behind them. All was quiet but for the footsteps on stone and Gromok's forced breathing. They walked many blocks further down the long passage. "High Priestess?" "Yes." "You told Ethne if she continues this way, she will never ascend. Does that mean there are others who were not able to ascend?" "Sadly, yes, my wild one. More than I would like. Not every disciple is willing to merge with their wildness. In the end, they face their wildness and run from it." "I have never heard this before. Do others know?" "Only those who have been to the Ascension Sanctum." "But last year you told my mother and my grandmother it was their time, that they were ripe for ascension, and I never saw them again. Did they ascend?" "That is not for me to say." Kolet was silent for a moment as they continued walking. "High Priestess, chosen voice of our wild and great Aquilina, I revere you for your service to the wildest one. This seems like something everyone in the disorder should be aware of." Itzcalia felt her chest growing warm. Her grasp on Gromok's mane tightened. "Be careful how you speak to me, child." "Please allow me one question, High Priestess. What happens to those who do not ascend?" "That is only for the High Priestess and the great Aquilina to know." "But your wildness." Itzcalia stopped and turned to the girl. "I will show you, Kolet. Come here." Kolet walked up to face her. "First, I need to tell you when I first found you, I saw so much promise in you, so much yearning for the wildness." The girl was beginning to see. Her eyes glistened again in the candlelight. "But now I have seen you are not the wolf I thought I saw in you. I saw the pity in your eyes tonight as that woman tried to defend the inexcusable. Then you want to know about your mother and your grandmother and others who may have failed to ascend. Failed. I gave them everything they needed to find their way, but you cannot open the door for them. Itzcalia stepped in close enough that their faces were only a few digits apart. If you knew you were destined for the wild, it would not matter where the cowards go. You would be content with being with your wild brothers and sisters where you belong. Kolet looked into the High Priestess's eyes. Her voice quivered. The others don't matter. No. Itzcalia took 2 fingers and touched their tips to Kolet's forehead. Kolet collapsed, unconscious, over Gromok's back. Itzcalia sighed. Such a waste. Itzcalia and Gromok strode a little further down the corridor, then down a slow slant of stairs to a black door that towered over them, tall enough that she couldn't see the top of it in the darkness. The High Priestess unlatched the door and pulled the round ring that was the door handle. The door thundered and creaked open. Green light and its tart smell poured out from the door along with the rotten aroma. Itzcalia and the wolf sauntered through into a cavern. The cavern was much taller than the door itself, and it went on farther than she could see by the light of the Vare bulbs scattered around. Wolves, all shapes, sizes, temperaments, and other variations, filled the vast cavern. All had green eyes with horizontal pupils like Gromok. The growling and howling fell silent as they saw Itzcalia enter, leaving only the sound of water dripping. They all stared at her and even took a few steps back. Itzcalia shoved Kolet's motionless body off Gromok's back and onto the floor with a grunt. There, eat. Itzcalia re-entered the corridor and closed it behind her as the wolves feasted.